Welcome to Knife Thoughts. This video is going to be on these two knives, and these are the two different versions of the newest knife from Rosecraft Blades, the Piney River Peanut. And so this is one that I was interested in checking out because the peanut is such a cool little pattern. A lot of people are familiar with the case peanut, and there's lots of other versions. I've had Rough Rider peanuts, and they really kind of have a cult following in the internet circles of slip joint aficionados. Now I only have one other peanut right now that to compare to, and unfortunately I don't have a case peanut, but I just was really interested in checking out Andy's kind of interpretation of this classic pattern. And so the peanut is, as the name might suggest, a small knife. It's a very small pattern. It's typically a curved jack, so you can see it has an S curve here. And it has either one or two blades usually. So a lot of the times it will have a clip point and a pen blade, or just a clip point. But then there are other versions where they'll make them with a bunch of blades and things like that. But both of these only have a single clip point blade. And that's a really classic version. And honestly, for me, I think it makes the most sense. The double blade version is maybe the more traditional or common version, but do you really need a tiny little pen blade along with this small clip point? Maybe, but maybe not. So I really like that it is a single blade. It makes it relatively thin. Now, this one in Stag, you can see the Stag is a really nice Stag, as is the usual with Rosecraft blades, and it is a little bit thicker, but it's not a super thick knife in general. Even the bone on this one has some kind of curvature to it, but it's a knife that you can definitely carry easily, being pretty small. So you can see this one is also a single blade clip point. This one is the vintage blue bone. So it's intentionally made to look kind of almost washed out or faded in a way. And I think it looks great. I mean, like I said, this is great Stag, but Rosecraft, they really have done a great job of their covers. I mean, that is a really nice looking blue bone. It almost looks like camel bone to me. So if you're familiar with Great Eastern Cutlery's camel bone, their blue camel bone, I think that this looks a lot like that. So, it's a really nice color in my opinion. And the handle is also comfortable. So it's actually a three-finger grip for me, even though it's a really small knife. And because of that curve to it, it feels good in the hand, actually. So I think it's really interesting how, there's a reason that there is a kind of cult following for this pattern, because you can get a lot of, your realistic cutting done with a knife this size. Now, maybe you won't skin an elk or a moose, or you know, prepare a bunch of vegetables for a salad or something like that. But for your real general daily tasks, opening boxes, cutting strings, whatever you're going to do, I think that this size blade is for the most part going to be enough. And a lot of people will only carry a peanut either just because that's all they really need, or as a challenge sometimes. I've seen that online. And, people tend to find that it does pretty much what they need. So it's interesting how it's a small knife, but you get a good feeling grip on it. And the action on these is really nice. So you can hear and see that it snaps closed nicely. These have stop pins, so you can see that stop pin in there. That way you don't have to worry about blade wrap. And I always really appreciate that. I hate blade wrap. And they sit well within the frame, so you can see that that tip is nice and down in there. Now this one seems to sit a little bit higher. The action actually is even better on this one. I'll let you hear that again. The sound of this one is really nice. Really, really nice. So it sits a little bit higher, but it's still definitely well within the frame. Like, I can't catch my finger on it when I run it along there. So, that's a nice thing. Um, Now, being that it has a stop pin, you can't really drop the kick on these. So, that's something to be aware of. I don't think you'll really need to, because the tip sits deep enough, and you're going to have to sharpen it quite a bit before you have the tip starting to come up, and then you can always just file it down basically this direction. But the nail nicks are pretty close to the blade wells. That's one thing I noticed when I first looked at these, is that the nail nicks are pretty close. I haven't had any trouble opening them, to be honest. You do have to get your nail in there. Like, I can't pinch these, but peanuts are not typically pinchable. So, you got to get your nail in there, but then it opens fine. The nail nicks are well done. They've got a nice kind of solid lip there to catch your nail on. So no real problem there. I always do prefer being able to pinch a knife, but it just doesn't make sense on this pattern, really. And I wanted to give you a comparison to the only other peanut that I have, which is a Queen made. I believe this is branded Shatton Morgan. No, it's Queen. So a Queen made peanut. And so you can see there are some differences. They're very similar in length. The Rosecraft is a little like heftier, just a little bit wider and a little bit less. It's got more curve to it, a little bit less just kind of a straight. And then interestingly, the top here, the pivot, is rounded on the Rosecraft, where it's squared on the Queen, and vice versa at the cap. So the cap is squared on the Rosecraft and Queen, or I'm sorry, and rounded on the Queen. So just an interesting little difference in style, but you can see they're very similar in size. And then again, this has a clip point, and then it does have a pen blade on the back, which, like I said, is a pretty traditional configuration. So, you can see, even though, this has thicker stock, so it's actually about the same thickness, even though this one's a two blade. So, it's not, I guess, the thinnest it could be, but, that thicker stock means that it's a heftier blade and all of that. Now, I wanted to show you a couple other size comparisons to some other small knives. So I've got a couple of GEC's smallest knives. Here is a number 22 Magnum. And you can see it's a little shorter. This is the number 05, right? Yeah, 05 keychain knife. And you can see it's a little shorter and thinner. And then I'm going to show you some of Rosecraft's other knives. This is a couple of my favorite Rosecrafts. This is the Otter Creek Barlow. You can see it's a good bit bigger. And then the Beaver Creek Barlow, really nice knife with really incredible stag, also a good bit bigger. So, these are small knives, but I think more than capable of most of your daily tasks. And as usual with Rosecraft, just made really well. I'll try to show you close up here the transitions, but basically, I don't see any gaps anywhere on these. These are just really, really nicely put together. No gaps between the covers and bolsters, no gaps on the back springs, and same deal here. I don't see any cracks on this, and just really nicely put together. Even around this shield, it's really well done. It might be an ever so slight gap in that one corner there, but honestly, I find gaps around shields to be really common on GEC knives and other kind of higher end knives. So really can't fault them for that. And these are just super well made, as usual with Rosecraft. So I've really enjoyed getting to check these out. I want to say thank you to Andy for sending these along for me to check out. If you are going to pick up one of these, they are available as of making this video. So I recommend traditional pocket knives. I'm thinking that Knife Ship Free doesn't have Rosecraft. I'm not 100% sure on that, but if they do, you can check them out also. But at Traditional Pocket Knives, you can use the code KT10 and get a discount. So definitely check them out there. Austin does a great job. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, leave any comments below. Check out my website, knifethoughts.com, where I post articles on knives like this and knife-related topics. And last but not least, as always, don't forget to go out and do good.